Welcome to the Restorative Longevity Podcast, where we share how to increase your quality of life while also increasing your longevity. Yes, you heard that right. We refuse to believe that as we get older, our quality of life naturally declines. And that's exactly what you're going to hear on this podcast. How to defy the odds with simple, effective strategies that anyone can implement into their daily routine. From holistic health practices to time-tested wisdom, we're here to help you thrive, not just survive. Now let's welcome our host, Jimmy Yen, also known as the Acu-Sensei. Jimmy is a licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, nutritionist, and restorative longevity expert dedicated to guiding you on your journey to vibrant health and lasting wellness.
Today's topic is cholesterol, your friend or foe? Okay, so is cholesterol your friend or your enemy in essence, right? The answer is it's both, right? You need cholesterol. The answer is you need cholesterol. However, it could be your enemy, and I'm going to explain why, right? But it's not the true enemy. You've got actually another enemy that is using cholesterol as a scapegoat, right? So that means scapegoat means cholesterol is not the real enemy. Another person, another thing is causing the problem, but it's pushing cholesterol up to your brain and saying, hey, it's cholesterol that's causing the problem. But in reality, it's not cholesterol, right? So the answer is cholesterol is your friend and your foe. Okay, so let's dive in. What is cholesterol? Cholesterol is just another lipid. It's another structural lipid, aka fat. So if you if you've listened to my previous podcast, when I started talking about fats in general, fats, we need them, right? We need them. We don't need them around our belly, right? To give us that little pudge or beer belly. We don't need that, but there's two types of fats. One is structural fats, one is storage fats. Structural fats are the ones we really need. Storage fats, especially here in the US, we don't need any more of that, okay? So structural fats are what makes our cells. Every single cell wall is composed of cholesterol. Cholesterol is a structural fat, right? However, I'm going to start breaking some misconceptions, myths. I would just say, give you a different perspective, right? I don't like to say people are wrong because nobody truly knows. Only God knows. But I like to say, here's a different perspective of how to look at the body. And again, what's the result? You know, I know some people are going to argue, oh, but research says this. Oh, but you're not a doctor. You're not a physician, Jimmy. Yes, I'm not. I'm not trained. I'm not a physician. I'm not trained to prescribe medication and do surgery. That's what physicians are trained to do here in the US, right? I am trained to help people increase their quality of life and as they age, increase their quality of life, live a better, longer life, right? That's what I'm trained in. And if that's what you want, you're in the right podcast. But if you're wanting medication, surgery, quick fixes, this is the wrong podcast, okay? So cholesterol. Let me start off. I'm going to go right deep in. There's two types of cholesterol, okay? Two types of cholesterol. There is cholesterol in your brain, and then there's cholesterol in the rest of your body, right? Cholesterol in your brain, cholesterol in your body. They ain't the same thing. They're different. Structurally, they're the same. I'm just talking about they're different in the sense of how your body utilizes them. So cholesterol in your brain is different from the cholesterol in your body, right? And when you go to your physicians, your doctors, and they talk about, oh, let's check your cholesterol. They are not checking the cholesterol in your brain. They're checking your cholesterol everywhere else outside of the brain, okay? That's what they're checking. And it's a different type of lipid, right? So again, cholesterol is not the same as saturated fats. In a previous podcast, I mentioned saturated fats are terrible for you. You should not be eating saturated fats. You do not need them, okay? So when your physician talks to you about your cholesterol being too high, they're referring to cholesterol in the rest of your body. They're not referring to cholesterol in your brain. And it's cholesterol that's in your bloodstream. More specifically, when they test your blood and you're saying your cholesterol is high, that is cholesterol in your bloodstream, right? Now, which in part, we think that cholesterol in our bloodstream is based on what we eat. I'm about to tell you something different. Okay, so I'm going to do this slow because I'm going to say some things that are going to be contradicting to what you will get on Google, what you will get on WebMD, the Mayo Clinic. You're going to get something different. Okay, I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying this is a different perspective, right? Where am I getting this information? I'm getting this information from a scientist who is the lead scientist in a Alzheimer's prevention center in a New York medical college. So they started a Alzheimer's prevention, not treatment, prevention. I'm sure they treat also, but they are one of the few that is focusing on prevention of mental disorders, Alzheimer's disorders. This is their research, right? Is it right, wrong? We won't know until 20 years later, right? But what I can tell you is this. It is in alignment with the way that people live their life in the blue zones and the way that people in traditional Chinese medicine, which has a 3,000-year-old history, that this current research and prevention of Alzheimer's is in alignment with that, okay? So, cholesterol in your body has nothing to do with the cholesterol in your brain. Let me repeat that. Cholesterol in the body, in your bloodstream, has nothing to do with the cholesterol in your brain, right? So that's one thing that we have to pay attention to. So when people are saying, oh yeah, your brain is made of cholesterol, lots of cholesterol, which is true. So you need to eat more cholesterol. No, you don't. I'm going to debunk that myth today, okay? So what are brain cholesterols? Unlike any other organ in your body, why is the cholesterol in your brain different from the cholesterol in your body? Your brain makes its own cholesterol. It don't need your help. And actually, you can't help it. There is something called the blood-brain barrier. Blood-brain barrier is kind of like like a castle. They have these walls to prevent people from coming in, right? They only have one gate, and you have to pass their gate guards to be able to go into the city. Your brain has one of those gates. It's called the blood-brain barrier. It does not let anybody and everybody in. So it does not let your body cholesterol that you eat, it does not let it into your brain. So when someone tells you, oh, you need to drink this cholesterol, I know, and even in natural medicine, people are saying you got to take this supplement. There's this supplement, butyric acid. Oh, it can help your brain. No, it can't. It ain't getting into your brain, right? So them saying that you taking that supplement is going to help your good cholesterol to build your brain, it ain't. It ain't gonna pass the blood-brain barrier, right? So that's one thing that you have to pay attention to, okay? Now, majority of your brain cholesterol is produced in our very first weeks of life. That's when our brain is developing, our nervous system, our central nervous system, our brain and our spinal cord are developing. During that time, your brain is producing massive amounts of cholesterol. But once that process is complete, that cholesterol building process in your brain, talking about in your brain, okay, it's different from your body, the cholesterol building process in your brain slows down. And as you go into a teenager phase, it pretty much almost stops. As an adult phase, it pretty much stops, okay? Very, very minimal. I would say just negligible. So your brain pretty much produces the cholesterol it will ever need by the time you're a teenager, right? So that's why, actually, when this is a side note, I'm gonna tangent off. Those of you who have kids and who are in contact sports like football, any type of head trauma sports, you got to be very careful. I love football, and I'm not going to tell you whether you should take your kids out or in a football. I watch college football, hook 'em horns, right? I love college football. I've never played it, right? And I don't have kids, so I'm just giving you data. Your brain is forming cholesterol, which is the structural, it's a protective for your cells, right? During your adolescence. So as you're growing as a kid, if you get a lot of trauma to your brain during that time, you could disrupt that process. And that could affect your kid's mental ability later on in life, okay? And I'll just leave it at that. I won't get into details of that. All right. In order to preserve its own cholesterol, okay, the brain completely seals itself off from the rest of the body. So once the brain produces the cholesterol in your brain, that cholesterol cannot go into the body, right? It is not like it can leave the castle. No, it can't. It stays up there, right? And the reason it's doing it is because the brain needs a lot of cholesterol. It can't lose cholesterol. It can't seep out cholesterol, because if it did, our brains would die, right? All of our nerve cells, they wouldn't have that insulation, right? It wouldn't be functioning well. So here's the fact. There is no connection between the amount of cholesterol you eat and your brain's function. What you eat, cholesterol-wise, has no connection with your brain cholesterol. So let's just think about that for a second, right? So some people, whether you take a supplement, it has no effect on your brain cholesterol, okay? So the cholesterol from foods, this is what they found in the Alzheimer's Prevention Clinic, will not benefit your mental capacities. Now, I'm going to tell you something that may sound contradicting. But so we know step one, what you eat will not affect your brain's cholesterol. And it will not affect your brain's ability to process data. It will not affect your mental capacity directly. But here's what's going to sound weird. But it can indirectly affect it. Here's how. Because those extra cholesterol that you're eating that you don't need, they're clogging your arteries. When they clog your arteries, that affects blood circulation, that affects your cardiovascular system. In a previous podcast, you will notice, you would have heard, the number one nutrient your brain needs is actually not cholesterol. The number one nutrient your brain needs is oxygen. Okay? So if you eat all this cholesterol, yes, it's not directly affecting your brain ability. It's not making you dumber directly, but it can make you dumber indirectly, because it will clog up your arteries and cause, a cardiovascular problem, your heart problem. It will prevent adequate oxygen from reaching your brain. Therefore, if your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, you become dumber. Does that make sense? Right? And you also lose your memory, right? So that's how cholesterol indirectly, your dietary cholesterol, that's how dietary cholesterol indirectly makes you dumber. It makes you lose your brain, okay? So you can't just say, oh, yeah, cholesterol, the cholesterol I eat, it won't affect my brain. It won't go into my brain, which is true. So I'm going to just eat all the fried chicken I want, right? No, because that will clog your arteries, which prevents blood circulation, smooth blood circulation, which is delivery of oxygen to your brain. Okay? So that's, hopefully you caught that. Now, what is cholesterol? So cholesterol, again, it is the building blocks it's like a bricks. In my analogy of a castle, you have the walls, right? The walls back then were built like brick by brick. That is cholesterol. Cholesterol is those brick by bricks, right? Now, here's the thing. Cholesterol, just like bricks, you go, chisel some stone from a mountain. That brick doesn't naturally just travel to the wall. It needs to be transported. And so does cholesterol, right? Cholesterol needs to be transported. So when cholesterol is made, it doesn't just naturally float to the right location. It needs to have taxis, what I call Ubers, Lyft. I call them taxis. So there's two types of taxis, two main categories of taxis in our body that taxi cholesterols. One is called LDL and one is called HDL. LDL stands for low density lipoproteins. Lipoproteins in general are taxis. Lipoproteins are the scientific medical term for taxis, for cholesterol. So lipoproteins, LDLs, and HDLs are taxis. So here's a misconception also. When you do your blood work, your physician is saying, hey, let's check your cholesterol levels. Let's see, they want your HDL to be high, your LDL to be low. That means your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol, right? they are actually not cholesterol. HDL and LDL are not cholesterol. They are taxis. They are Uber drivers, right? And here's the thing. I've dispensed this wrong information before too, and that's why I'm correcting this information, right? LDLs and HDLs, VLDLs, when they measure in your blood panel, they are not cholesterol. They are taxis. They taxi your cholesterol, right? So what's the difference? LDL, low density lipoproteins. These are the taxis that transport the cholesterol that your body makes, right? And what you eat to specific organs in your body. HDLs taxi that cholesterol to the liver. LDLs are taxis that transport cholesterol to specific organs in your body. HDLs are taxis that transport cholesterol to your liver. As I explain, more detail about LDLs, what's the function of these taxis, you'll kind of understand why you want a higher HDL and why you want a lower LDL, right? The problem with LDL, so LDLs, let's come to LDLs. LDLs transport cholesterol to specific organs and throughout the body, right? And if you have a genetic, this is where genetics come into play. If you have a genetic, genetically you have inheritance of, cholesterol issues, right? Inability to process cholesterols, or if you have other medical conditions, or you're taking medications, other medications, they can cause your LDLs, so your LDL taxi, all right, they can cause them to just drop off their passenger at the wrong location. So LDLs are heavily influenced by genetics, medications, other medical conditions, right? There's just like genetics, medical conditions, and other medical conditions and medications. They could cause your Uber driver to go crazy, and your Uber driver says, "Get out of my taxi, get out of my Uber," right? "I don't care, you're not at your destination. You are pissing me off, get off," right? They just start kicking their passengers out. That's what happens to LDLs very frequently, right? And here's typically where they like to kick off their passenger, because the LDLs, right, they have to travel. So you have to understand, your highway in your body is your blood vessels, your arteries. That's your highway system. So your Uber driver jumps into the highway system, which is your arteries, and if they get pissed off, they kick your passenger out. That passenger is cholesterol. So it's very common that the passengers are kicked out in your arteries, right? And as this process continues, there's a buildup of cholesterol in your arteries, right? And that's when physicians say, "Oh yeah, it's your arteries that cause the plaque." See, if that cholesterol builds up together, it forms a plaque, which blocks the artery, right? But here's the thing. It is not because of cholesterol that cause the plaque. It is called inflammation. Because there's chronic inflammation in your artery walls, and we'll go in deeper in another podcast, but I don't want to get too deep, but because I want to focus on cholesterol today. So your Uber driver gets into the highway, which is your arteries, gets pissed off, kicks your passenger off, which is your cholesterol, and he leaves your Uber driver leaves the passenger cholesterol in your arteries. And then your artery starts to accumulate a lot of cholesterol, and then eventually plaque may form, and these plaques clog your arteries, causing heart attacks and strokes. So we go back, it wasn't the cholesterol's fault, it was the LDL, your Uber taxi. They're too sensitive, right? There's your Uber taxi. Then you gotta think, what makes your Uber taxi get so crazy? Genetics does play a factor, but the majority of the factor is other medical conditions and medications, right? Now, let's come to HDLs, high density lipoproteins. These they Uber your cholesterol to the liver. And what happens then? Your liver either eliminates the excess cholesterol or it converts it into hormones to build for other uses, like your sex hormones. Like your sex hormones are made of cholesterol, right? So if you have low libido, it could be your sex hormones, your cholesterol is low. Or your inability, actually, it's your inability of your liver to convert that cholesterol into hormones, right? So cholesterol gets a bad rap, but cholesterol is it's like a brick on the wall. Remember this castle, right? You have this castle and you need bricks, you need stones, not bricks, you need stones to build the walls of the castle. The stone is not hurting anybody. It's not doing anything. But guess what? If the people in the castle use that stone and they use that I think it's called trebuchet or something like that, and they throw it at someone else and it kills someone else, people are saying it's the stone that killed that person. No. It's the person who used that stone for evil purposes, right? The stone is not good or evil. I mean, it's actually good because it builds the castle walls. Cholesterol is the same thing. Cholesterol is such a scapegoat, right? So when it gets taxied to the wrong place, people blame it on cholesterol. But in fact, it's the Uber drivers that's the problem. It's the LDLs, right? So what is good cholesterol? And so how high of a cholesterol do what is high cholesterol? People come up, physicians, scientists come up with numbers. These numbers change all the time. I'm going to give you a number, but I don't want you to take it as it is the finite number. It is the holy grail. It's not. These numbers change all the time, okay? But I will tell you, these scientists in the prevention of Alzheimer's clinic, they found that if you have a total cholesterol of more than 240 milligrams per deciliter, right? You have a 3 times risk of getting dementia later in life. Now, even at 220 milligrams of deciliter of cholesterol, right, which is considered borderline, you still have double the risk of getting dementia, right? So those are numbers. I hold them loosely, right? Because it's not the cholesterol that's the problem. It's the Uber driver, it's inflammation. That's the main problem. So what's the solution, right? Let me get to the solution. Cholesterol, here's another thing. Cholesterol, we think that when we eat, what we eat immediately gets absorbed into the body and then it increases our cholesterol. So here's another fact. It's going to change it's going to be like, what? Actually, what you eat affects your cholesterol levels. Not that much. Okay. The truth is 75% of your body cholesterol. Okay. We're not talking about brain cholesterol anymore. We're talking about body everywhere else. 75% of your body's cholesterol is produced by your body. What you eat only affects 25% of your cholesterol. Okay, now I'm not saying you go out and get Kentucky Fried Chicken, Popeye's chicken, some barbecue. I'm not saying you can go, that's free range to do that. No, that's not what I'm saying. Okay. Why is that? Why is 75% of your cholesterol, your body's cholesterol, produced in your body, and what you eat, dietary cholesterol, only affects 25% of your cholesterol? Because the body tightly regulates your cholesterol in your blood. And it does this through internal strict controls that make sure you don't absorb too much cholesterol from the foods that you eat. Okay. So in other words, yes, eating cholesterol isn't necessarily going to give you a heart attack. So why are physicians so concerned? Because other nutrients can push your cholesterol levels to the sky. Right? So there's a Chinese saying, 水能载舟, 亦能覆舟. What that means is water can float your boat. It can also sink your boat, right? So cholesterol can float your boat. It could also sink your boat. So cholesterol is neither good or bad. It is actually, it's neither good or evil. It's how you use it that is either good or evil. It's actually very similar like money. People think money is the root of all evil. It's not. It's the love of money that's the root of all evil. Or it's how you use that money to, for evil purposes or good purposes, right? So same with cholesterol. So the body tightly regulates the amount of cholesterol you're able to absorb, right? Other nutrients can force your cholesterol to go up. So what is the real evil substance? Saturated and trans fats. So in our previous podcast, I talked about saturated and trans fats. You don't need any of that. Okay. So those saturated and trans fats, they push cholesterol up to the surface, and so that we, as physicians and scientists, that only look at the top level. They're like, when they try to problem solve people, they look at the microscope. Oh, it's cholesterol. There's so much cholesterol in your bloodstream. That's the problem. So let's give you medication to lower cholesterol. They didn't go into further detail to see, oh no, it's actually saturated fats and trans fats that force cholesterol to be in the bloodstream, right? So here's the tricky part. So how do we eat? A lot of things that we eat contain cholesterol and contain those saturated fats, right? So it's hard to eat. So what should you eat? I talked about this in another podcast that I did. Fish. Fish is the best animal protein you could ever eat. It has cholesterol and it has the PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, right? And the MUFAs, monounsaturated fats, which are the saturated fats, the unsaturated fats that you need. So fish, shellfish, and eggs are the exception. They are high in cholesterol, but low in saturated fats. Fish, shellfish, and eggs. Yes, I know people are allergic to eggs and shellfish, right? You can still eat fish, right? And that's a whole nother story, how they got allergic to that. If they were born with that allergy, that's a genetics. But if you were not born with that allergy and you developed that allergy, it's not because you had something else caused that allergy, okay? Because we've helped many people with food allergies, like gluten allergy, right? Gluten sensitivity, restore their body's function where they're able to eat some of that stuff. Clinical trials show no association between eggs and heart risk and the risk of heart disease. That doesn't mean you go out and eat tons of eggs. Eggs are a good food. Eggs are a great food. They got a bad rap because the sugar industry paid Harvard scientists to manipulate, to fake a research study to show that cholesterol was causing heart disease. Now, 10, 20 years later, there's no correlation. It was actually sugar. Sugar causes heart disease, okay? But here's the thing. All of these recommendations that I'm telling you, everybody responds differently to dietaries, cholesterol foods, and saturated fats, right? And why does everybody respond differently? Because everybody has different organ functions. So you have to look at so remember, the HDLs, your high density, your HDL taxi, your HDL Uber driver takes all the cholesterol to your liver. Now, what if your liver is dysfunctioning? The liver converts that cholesterol. It eliminates that. It breaks it down and eliminates it. That's one. Or it converts it into hormones to produce your other hormones, right? So again, if you got low sex drive, it's possibly a liver function problem. That your liver is not breaking down, converting the cholesterol effectively to make those sex hormones. So by you just pumping full, you just take the estrogen, progesterone. We see this when we treat menopause, women in menopause. They start doing even the bioidentical hormones. They start doing that, but that's not the problem, right? The problem could be your liver. But again, Western medicine doesn't look at like it that way. They look at, oh, you are low in this, so let's just give you a medication for this. You are low in vitamin B, vitamin XYZ. Let's give you a medication or a supplement for XYZ. I'm saying natural healthcare practitioners, alternative healthcare practitioners are doing something similar as well. So you got to be careful of that, just randomly taking supplements. Oh, you are low in progesterone and estrogen. Oh, you need to take more DHEA. A lot of holistic practitioners will say that. No, you don't. Did they even look at your liver function? The liver controls the conversion of your cholesterol to your sex hormones. If the liver is dysfunctioning and you just keep on pumping DHEA, you're not number one, you're not doing restorative longevity. You're not restoring your organ function. You're doing the exact same thing as a medication is doing. So be careful of how you use supplements as well. Supplements are great. Some of them are natural. Most of them are synthetic. They're still man-made, so just no different from medication, right? So you got to be careful. Okay, so I hope that helps. Let me answer some questions. Denise Parker, which one should be high HDL or LDL for optimal health? Yeah, so, again, treat these ranges very loosely because they keep on changing, right? So currently, the way that the medicine laboratory is practiced is that you want your HDLs to be high, more than 50 milligrams per deciliter, right? And you want your LDLs below 100 milligrams per deciliter, right? But here's the thing, and then they will say, if you have a total cholesterol of more than 200 milligrams per deciliter, even though it's okay if your HDL is super high and your LDLs are low. It's because your HDLs are high. That's why your total cholesterol is high. But I just gave you, from the prevention of Alzheimer's, what did they say? If your total cholesterol is 220 milligrams per deciliter or higher, you still have 2 times the risk of developing dementia, or getting dumber, or losing your memory, losing your mind, right? So I know this is confusing. That's why I don't want you to stay so fixated on those numbers. Those numbers I say are references. But let's think about this logically, okay? If your total cholesterol, remember, what are they measuring? They're not actually measuring those bricks, those stones. They're measuring your HDLs and your LDL, right? HDL and LDL are not cholesterol. They are taxis, right? So if your taxis go up, even the good taxis, they call HDL the good taxis. They're both good taxis, right? But let's just say, just to be inconsistent with what culture says, HDL's good taxis, LDL's bad taxis. It doesn't matter if you have good taxis. If you have an influx of good taxis, what does that mean? The good taxis still taxi cholesterol. That means there's still a lot of cholesterol in your bloodstream. So even if you have a lot of good cholesterol, good HDLs, good taxis, that's still signifying you have a problem. Something is either let's just say that you're not eating, your diet is perfect. Your diet is perfect and your HDL, your good taxis are still elevated, right? Number one, physicians will tell you, if they see if they see your HDLs are like 100, they go, oh no, that's okay. That's good taxis. That's good cholesterol. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Is there? So why is your body producing more of these taxis? It's because your body senses there's more of these passengers. What is these passengers? Cholesterol. Something is causing cholesterol to flood your bloodstream. It's not cholesterol. That's not the problem. By you taking medication to lower your cholesterol doesn't fix the problem, because the problem wasn't cholesterol. It was something that was forcing cholesterol into your bloodstream. That's saturated fats, right? Trans fats, liver dysfunction as well. Liver dysfunction. If your liver cannot eliminate cholesterol effectively, that cholesterol, the excess cholesterol, goes back into your bloodstream. So it could be a liver problem, right? So we just have to think about this. We have to think about this in a logical sense, okay? I am not a physician, okay? So you don't need to. I always get someone criticizing me, say I'm not a physician. No, I'm telling you, I'm not a physician. I'm not trained in medications. So I can't give you advice in medications because I'm not trained in medications. I'm not a physician, so I'm not trained in medications, and I'm not trained in surgery. Okay. So really quick, I'm going to answer Shaheem's. What's the best treatment for chronic pain in the legs and toes, buzz in feet, Baker's cyst, back of knee? Number one, Shaheem, you need to get imaging to see what's causing that. There's so many different causes, but I will tell you one consistent cause: inflammation. All of y'all, whether you're tuning in because of cholesterol or you're tuning in because of you got chronic pain, inflammation is the cause. You have to look at what is the cause of your inflammation. So June, is the statin drugs good to take? You have to ask your physicians. What I can tell you this, and which is not medical advice, because you can get this from Google, you can get it from any of the drugs.com. Statins have various side effects. One is it tears down your muscles, right? And it can be toxic also for your organs, right? So you got to check on that. Make sure your physician is checking your organs, especially your liver, right? They're looking at your liver enzymes. minimum. There's other tests that your physician should do that they probably won't do unless insurance covers it. It's not your physician's problem, it's the insurance problem. But coming back to the solution, make sure you ask your physician about your liver and your kidney function. If you're taking a statin medication, you need to ask your physician, hey, how are my kidneys doing? And how are my liver? But you yourself need to take control of that. You need to understand labs as well, right? You can't, because many physicians are trained this way. If it's within normal range, they're going to tell you everything's fine. Or if just one thing is out of range, everything else, if 9 out of 10 markers in your blood test are normal, they're going to say you're okay. But here's the thing, you're not okay. When you look at the ranges, you don't want to look at, are you in range? You got to look at, are you close to being out of range? If you're close to being out of range on either end, you already have a problem. Now, physicians, they don't know what to do about that. It's not their fault. They're not trained in that. They're not trained in restorative longevity, right? So you have to look for someone who is trained in looking at restoring your organ function, okay? We're the only clinic that focuses on restorative longevity, but you can find clinics that are focused on restoring organ function. If you can do that, they can help you navigate those blood tests. All right, guys, thank you for tuning in. And I hope this topic continues to provide you more insights on how you can make changes in your daily life, because the goal here for this podcast is to help you age better, increase your quality of life as you age, live long, live longer, live better. All right, guys, I'll see you next week, same time, Sundays, Central Standard Time, 8:30 Central Standard Time. See you next week.
This episode is sponsored by Achieve Integrative Health, the #1 acupuncture clinic in the US. We're grateful for their support in helping us bring you the Restorative Longevity Podcast.